What's up, guys? This is Derek from moreplatesmoredates.com. So I'm going to be talking to you guys about specifically when you stop minoxidil, the shedding period that follows that, and will your hair recover after experiencing that shed? So, this is a very common concern, and it doesn't seem like a lot of people seem to have like a definitive answer, and there are a lot of like theories thrown around, but basically, what happens when you stop minoxidil is you can induce something called acute telogen effluvium. I think that's how you pronounce it. And basically what this is basically it induces an acute increased shedding phase of your scalp. And it's very similar to the shedding phase you get when you start minoxidil in the first place. If you've used minoxidil, I'm sure you already know in like a rudimentary way how it works. Basically, it has an initial shedding phase that causes the dormant hairs to be shed to make room for new growth and ultimately better growth down the line in a few months after the life cycle of your hairs has concluded pretty much. And it also widens the hair follicle, allowing thicker strands of hair to grow and keeping them in the anagen phase longer, which is the growth phase. So basically the end result of that is longer and thicker strands of hair than you would normally have. The first couple months of minoxidil can really suck because you're in that shedding phase, so you're basically making your hair look worse before it gets better kind of thing. And this can be really mentally taxing for some individuals, and the problem with this is a lot of people can't make it through this initial phase because it's just like too tough on them mentally to see their hair get even worse. Like the whole reason you start minoxidil in the first place is because you notice you're having hair loss. But then if you get even worse hair loss from starting this stuff, a lot of times it freaks people out and they just can't deal with it and they get off. And the problem with this is basically like during the initial shed phase, you kind of just have to tough it out and deal with the fact that you might actually look worse before it gets better. And when you stop the treatment early, you could have induced the shedding phase already, you probably have, but then if you stop it early, you basically induce the shedding phase without having any like long-term protection because you're not gonna get the regrowth. So basically you've induced a shedding phase for no reason, and now you have to wait however many months down the line for your hair life cycle to conclude so you can get back to what you were before you even started minoxidil. Not any better than when you started minoxidil, but just to the same. So, but the common concern people have is, will you get back to that same state you were at pre-minoxidil use? So can minoxidil make you actually lose more hair than you would if you didn't take it? So there's a big debate between this, and a large majority of individuals are concerned and convinced that minoxidil can actually like permanently worsen your hair. But then the other side of the spectrum is individuals who feel like if you stop it early, you aren't furthering your hair loss, rather you're simply inducing the shed phase and your hair will eventually return to its pre-minoxidil state in a few months once everything is like concluded its new life cycle. So the truth of the matter is that like basically how minoxidil works, it stimulates hair follicles and growth but doesn't reduce DHT or the enzyme responsible for its accumulation around the hair follicle, which is the primary mediator of male pattern baldness in genetically susceptible individuals. So therefore, when treatment is stopped, DHT still has its DHT is going to have its effect on your hairline regardless if you're on minoxidil or not. But when you stop minoxidil, you have induced the shedding phase, you aren't going to get any of the regrowth, and you're still continuing down the normal path that you're genetically predisposed to for hair loss. So it's like a lot of individuals freak out, they stop minoxidil cold turkey, they have to experience a worse hairline for several months until they recover to pre-minoxidil state. But once they get back to that pre-minoxidil state, they notice that their hair isn't as good as it was when they first started minoxidil. So then they assume the only logical conclusion they have is that minoxidil screwed up their hair and basically permanently increase their hair loss. But the fact of the matter is that like your baseline from day one of minoxidil use is not a good reference point for like where your hair should be, like if you stop minoxidil, because basically when you like it takes several months to recover from acute telogen effluvium, and in this time frame your hair loss is still likely to continue moving in the same direction it genetically would, towards the bald side of the spectrum, right? So while you sit there observing your hair recovery on a day-to-day basis without any hair loss prevention products being used, your genetic path to baldness is still progressing like it would normally, but you have zero protection and no regrowth plan down the line. So many individuals seem to completely disregard this and think that the minoxidil furthered their hair loss, but the reality of it is that your hair loss is progressing just like it normally would, and even once you recover from post-minoxidil shedding, your new baseline may very well be a lot worse than your previous baseline was however many months ago, maybe like half a year or something, because your androgenic alopecia has progressed just like it would regardless of all the other factors. So let's just say, assuming you never used minoxidil in the first place and it's January of 2017, and by September you have lost some hair, that's your baseline right there for September, because even if you stop the minoxidil, your pre-minoxidil baseline is non-existent anymore, because your genetics have still progressed you further along the line of baldness, because you're not using any anti-androgens, you're not using any DHT blockers, you're not using any minoxidil, you're not using growth stimulators, stuff like that. So basically, unless you're protected, you're just going to progress like you normally would to baldness. So you need to keep that in mind if you stop minoxidil, because a lot of people are freaked out that once you start it, you're kind of like screwed and you're stuck using it for a lifetime because you can't stop it, because it'll induce some crazy shedding phase that's going to make you go worse than you would if you never started minoxidil in the first place. But it's completely ridiculous if you actually think about how minoxidil works in the first place and the science behind it. So don't worry about that. I hope that's dispelled a lot of, or helped ease your mind a bit if that's what you're worried about. But anyway, my experience with acute telogen effluvium, the first time I used minoxidil, I used way too much. I was far too generous with my applications and I used to double dose on a regular basis because I wanted to ensure it was working, which is obviously a stupid idea, but I was young and younger, and I didn't know what I was doing really. With minoxidil though, you need to realize more is not better. And when you start using more thinking it's going to be better results, you're simply increasing your risk of side effects. Within a week, I had gained 7 pounds of water weight, and it was just super obvious that I was using way too much because I was getting all the classic side effects that you would get. And my natural reaction back then was, oh my god, I gotta get off this shit. So I was also shedding like crazy too. So I stopped it, and basically I induced the acute telogen effluvium, which is like the shitty shedding phase you get after stopping minoxidil. I was shedding like crazy, but I kept up with the rest of my hair loss prevention regimen, using my RU 58841 every night and my ketoconazole shampoo every time I showered, letting it soak into my scalp and ensuring that it's doing what it's supposed to do, killing all the DHT buildup in the hair follicle. And I did a lot of research into what exactly telogen effluvium is and why it happens, how it works, if you can recover from it. And I was very put at ease when I realized it's not like a permanent thing, and anything that's going to happen to you genetic-wise is going to happen it's independent from your minoxidil use. So minoxidil is not going to further progress your hair loss if you don't use it, or if you use it and then you decide to get off it. So do not worry about that. Within a couple months, I noticed my hair density was starting to return after my shedding phase had completed, and spots that were previously really thinning got completely recovered, and my hair returned to baseline, which was pre-minoxidil use. And like actually my real baseline. It wasn't further down the spectrum towards baldness because I had kept up with my hair loss regimen of other products during that time. So it's really important that you do that. It's a huge mistake guys make is where they start minoxidil, they freak out because of shedding, so they stop it, and then once they have shedding from stopping minoxidil use, they freak out again, and then they get back on minoxidil, and it's just like a big gong show of yo-yo effects, and it's not actually going to give you the positive benefits if you keep jumping on and off it. You need to either stay on it for a long period of time or not use it at all. So keep that in mind. As far as the brand I like, I've talked about it before, I prefer the Rogaine brand foam because it dries a lot faster than the liquid. And the cheap generic brand stuff, honestly, it's so fucking oily that it just makes your hair look disgusting. So I definitely don't recommend that one unless you don't mind having the super greasy head. It doesn't look good though. So I linked the foam in my article, as well as where you can, my article for RU58841 and the link for where you can get ketoconazole shampoo, the one I use. And yeah, that about concludes it, guys. I know this is something that when I was experiencing it, I looked it up and there's only like a few threads with guys going over this, and I'm kind of surprised that it's not more common, but honestly, I think that kind of is a testament to minoxidil's effectiveness in the first place, because if there's millions of people using this stuff and there's only like a token amount of threads on the internet about this specific situation, then obviously more often than not there's people who are satisfied with what's going on with their minoxidil use as opposed to dissatisfied. I can literally only find like 10 threads on the whole internet with this specific situation. So don't worry about it, guys. Check out the article if you absorb information better via reading. I know sometimes I do. And there's a subscription bar on the right-hand side, top right of my blog, so go subscribe there. Click the subscribe button on my YouTube channel below and get updated when I put out new stuff.